We are back. So when we left off, we were talking about how to keep balance, raising children, being a wife, being a mom, and I need all of you to speak to that because I'm sure you took a different approach. Whoever wants to start.
I always let one of them start.
Okay.
Kick in.
Well, I don't mind starting because I'm going to need to listen to what you two ladies say. Because I still have children in the home, and I have 4. They are very involved, athletics, dance, and our time is consumed with kids' activities. And we're at the end, and I'm actually a little nervous now because I've got one daughter, 2 years home.
Mm-hmm.
We are so busy worrying about the kids, and both of us. He's in as much as I am. He handles the school and college and all of that, and we share the household chores. We're so involved with what they're doing that in the next couple years, I'm going to have to start all over, regroup, replan, refigure this thing out. Because we both agree we're in it for the long haul.
Absolutely.
So we know that we are going to have to put the work in. So I'm going to listen to the two of you to find out what the work is that I have to put in.
Okay. And I don't know if I can help you much, but and simply because growing up again, because a lot of things you learn from your family life as you grow up as a child, and I did not have that example. So I learned everything firsthand. Got
On the job
married,
training.
on the job training, and I think I'm still on the job learning. One of the things I did learn as my husband and I grew together in raising a family is that we came to the decision that we are, whatever he says, I'm going to support it, because our children started learning how to work. If the mother said one thing, go to daddy, well, daddy, can I? And get him to say one thing, and I started noticing a trend. I was like, okay, so, you know, my husband and I started talking. It was like, okay, we're going to support one another. That whatever I say, even if I didn't quite go along with it, I would go along and support him. Just so that they could understand what unity is. The discussion was behind
closed doors, just with the two of you.
Exactly, and so they can understand what unity is. Now, that doesn't mean that we never argued, and when, you know, they've heard us argue. But one of the things that I've done too in that, you know, because you learn as you go, is that I said, let's kind of stop the arguing when we have our argument, that it won't always be in front of the children. Now, I kind of have a difference. It's good and it's not good, because what you don't want to do is make that child think that no one ever argues, or there's never a disagreement in your house. So they did see disagreement,
and they won't know how to handle.
But then they seen us how we made up, how we came back together. So I do think there's some that's important for them to see that that's reality, and it's a part of growing up. It's a part of learning how to be unified. And they recognize, my daughter even says today, she said, you know, I think if Dad ever dies before you, it won't be long before you'll go. She said, because you're so close together, you're so knitted together. And I thought that was kind of unique for her to say that, but she felt that our unity over the years, as she's seen us growing together and being together, that she felt that's how close we are.
So when your children were younger, so the balance that we're trying to, because I hear men say it so much in this studio, they have said it. So how can we help our sisters, me one day, if the Lord says the same, to keep the balance of the marriage with my husband and still being the mom and raising the children? Because to some degree, and this isn't a negative, it seems as if mothers have more of a daily touch with the kids than the fathers do. So how do we help?
Well, let's see.
So in the job training.
Well, you know, I as a young girl watched couples in our church years ago, and I I really believe this is what shaped my thinking. It wasn't a training that I had, because we didn't do a whole lot of those trainings when I first got married. It was trial and error. But I watched couples. I don't know why I did, but I would study people and I would study couples. And one of the things that I noticed was I watched the interaction between the husband and the wife, and in most cases it wasn't good. And what I would say, what I came to understand early was it was relational. You know what I'm saying? It was like something was missing relational between the couples. And I noticed that early. And then I looked at the relationship that the kids had with the parents, and what they said about their parents. And then I looked at the relationship the parents had with the kids. And all I know is that after years of observing that, I knew what I didn't want to do. I knew what would have to change if I ever got married. And when I got married, I was actually pretty terrified. I mean, like the day before, I was thinking, I don't really know enough about any of this, and I don't really have any good examples.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to make this man's life miserable. I mean, I was just really fearful of even hooking up, because, you know, I was coming from a divorced family, and I watched and it's so sad to say, but I watched the marriages in our church where I was raised up in. I watched them, and I did not think good about marriages and the family. And I was in too many homes watching the interaction. And all I know is when I came out of that, I had an impression in my mind of what I didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. And so when I had kids, of course, I absolutely loved children, and I loved parenting. Mm-hmm. With all of these challenges, I love my babies, I love my kids, I love being the school mom, the party mom, the field trip mom. Right. I loved every phase, and even teenagers. I mean, I loved every phase of it. But one of the things that I learned, even about my husband and his parents, and me talking to him, he told me early on that somewhere along the way, his mom's expectation of what his father was supposed to bring or do, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, whatever the expectation was, mm-hmm. he couldn't live up to it. And one day he packed his bags and left. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that was a pretty major impression or words that he said to me as his wife, and I'm thinking, okay, was that okay?
What expectations am I not supposed to have?
So it left an impression in my mind. Am I going to put false expectation on this man, and he's going to pack up one day and leave? And then that we were a young marriage, and we had babies early. He was still trying to find out who he was. He had, you know, giftings, and he was talented, and everybody pulled on him. I wanted to be a homebody. I did not want to be married to a minister, pastor, or anything like it, because my witness of that was not good. And so I wanted him to get off from work from IBM and come home and be a dad, mm-hmm. and be a husband. That was not his goal. He was a singer, songwriter, he ministered, and he was in the height of his, I don't want to say glory, but he was learning what all of that meant. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day he told me, when I was trying to get him to stay home and to focus on family, like, you know, I was thinking, I'm going to make this thing work, we're going to make this thing work. You came from a divorced family, I came, that ain't going to happen over here. So, you know, I was, you know, reading and studying. Nobody really took me, but I had a desire to know and wanted to do it right. And I remember one day he said to me something like, on this line, well, you knew what I was doing before we got married. Like, so you want me to what? Do what? You want me to change? I mean, what are you asking me to do? He didn't understand. I mean, he just thought, well, I'm going to work, I'm paying the bills, we're kind and nice to each other, we got kids. This is just, you know, he didn't know any better, and neither did I. So I had this thought about putting false expectations on him, and coming to understand at an early age he could only give me what he knew. He could only give me that, and I could only give him what I knew, except I was intentional about coming to know more. So one of the things I did know was I could not I needed to make way for him when he did come home.
That's good, Pastor C.
I needed to make space for him when he did come home.
That's
So
good.
those kids needed to be up and out of the way, so to speak, if that was possible, as much as possible, and put things in perspective, and that all of our conversations wasn't about the kids.
That's good.
A lot of our conversations needed to be about me and you. And I remember someone saying this to me: as at different stages of your marriage, his desires change. Maybe at this stage it's this, but maybe 2 years from now his desires are different. So if you never ask him, you're still thinking that this is what makes him happy. That might not be what's making him happy.
Him
now.
asking her as
And
well.
asking me the same thing. And so someone told me that early on, and I remember taking these every year at our anniversary time. I would talk about what is his view on us as a couple. What is his view on us as a marriage? What do you want me to do different? If you could change this about me, what would you change? What is it that you don't like? What is it that you do like? I mean, I was willing to be very transparent about what he wanted and what he didn't want. I came to think I was this wonderful person. I found out along the way I wasn't as great as I thought I was. You know, I was a good housekeeper. I liked to cook. I planned meals. You know, I did those things that I thought would make a good house, make a good home. But then I later found out that some of that stuff didn't matter as much to him as it did me, and it wasn't making him all that it wasn't that he didn't like it, but there were some other things that he wanted along the way that I had to make some changes for. But if I had never asked, and sometimes we're fearful to ask that because we don't want to hear the bare truth. And then I would ask him, can I be honest with you? Can I tell you what I need right now, or what I would like to see differently about us, about our relationship? And so I don't think that, you know, I had this magical formula, but I was intentional. Every anniversary, I made it a point to reassess who we were and where we were going as
You
a
know,
couple.
that's such an interesting, you know, I do some before you say I do counseling, and that's one of the things I encourage people. You know, on our jobs, we get annual reviews.
That's good.
And I say, you need to do an annual review. How are we doing? How am I doing? How and be able to discuss that. And I contend that when you get to 20 years, even though you may be at 20 years and 20 plus years and you didn't do that yet, it's a new approach. Because I had a couple say, you know, our kids are gone, and I'm looking at her like, no, who are you? And what do you like? And what does he like? But if you're doing those reviews, it's never too late to be teachable and coachable and trainable, and put a new flip on some. Like, oh, okay, that's an idea, because you've certainly done it this long. You know, how can you can add this little component to make your marriage better and keep it going and keep it healthy. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
I was going to say he really helped me with that too, in a real raw way. One time, you know, because like Ann, I would talk to my kids so they was probably blue in the face, you know, because we never got a chance to talk. So of course I might have been a little more than 50% of what I should have been in my talking. Probably was like 80-90% with my kids, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, because I wanted to have an open communication with them. And I remember one day he told me, he would tell me, because you know he's a great dad, great father, but he would really let me have all the conversations I ever wanted to have with the kids, the boys. And I remember one day after I had all these conversations, he said to me one day, he said, you know, one day they're going to grow up, and he said, babe, they're going to really hurt you. And I'm going to be here to help put those pieces back together when they do. I thought, what?
Wow.
In the world would you say that? And really what he was saying is that you invest so much time into them. And he said, and it's good, babe. I'm not saying it's not good, but they're not going to turn out perfectly. And somewhere along the way, each one of them will hurt you in some way, and I'm going to be here to help pick up the pieces and help walk you through it. And you know, it literally took my breath when he said that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, why would you say so? But it happened. They took turns, they took directions in their life that I found myself just completely broken. And guess what? he was there to pick up the pieces.
Mhm.
Because he was like, you know, this is what you do. This is your nature. To love them, to nurture them, that's what you do. But the Father's here to bring the balance to it. And that's really what he was saying to me.
And that's why fathers, one of the reasons why fathers are so important. When I was putting this program together, I said, Lord, I couldn't think, and that's not to say there are not single moms out there. There may even be friends of mine that are great mothers and have raised great responsible children. I just couldn't think of anybody, and that's not who God dropped in my spirit. But, you know, Pastor C knows I do a program called the Father Lost Forum, and there's so many fathers programs. But the advocate of fathers being in the home, and I absolutely believe, because a part of the forum that I do, it's not so much that a father is just in the home, but he's engaged.
Yes.
Because I'll never forget, and I say it publicly because he said it publicly, Pastor Johnson saying he got to a point, I'm not sure if it was young adulthood or as a grown man, where he realized it was best that his father wasn't there. And I remember sitting there thinking, who would say that? Why would you say that? But he explained it because of where his father was, what he was doing, the type of man he was at that point in his life. It was best that he wasn't in his life at that time, because he does, you know, where he would have ended up. Mm-hmm. And so I got that. And in my father being in the home, it wasn't always a positive experience. It wasn't. And sometimes I wonder, would it have been best if he wasn't? But as I'm an adult woman and have, you know, gone through my own healing and yet being healed and under great ministry and love God myself and personal relationship and in the Word, it's all worked together for my good. And so, but it's just so important to be able to have the balance of a father and a mother. And even back to the pastor's kids that was here, that's the thing that they all said. Because one of the things I noted was that you had 3 sons and Lady Sharon has 3 sons. 4 sons. And I'm like, now I said this to them. I said, now I know these 2 women handled their sons. I said, they got with them. I said, so just even asking the other people that, you know, young people that were here, you know, how did that discipline look in your house? So you guys might not want to tell it, but go back to YouTube. They told it. But just that the balance of having their father there. That the other part of being raised and to be a man or to be a young lady. So I do want to ask your insight on that. What role do you think the father plays? And I know there's a biblical world and all the great things the scriptures say.
Yes. Tag on to one of the things I said. Mm-hmm. He would let me talk to them and go through all about whatever me and the boys would go through, because he felt like that because I was the only female in the house, I needed to have I don't know what I would call it, I don't want to say position, but I needed to have a standard with them, or something with them that they knew, okay, I can only take mom so far. Mm-hmm. And so he would let me work with them and talk with them, and I had to smack on them a couple of times and even try to beat them down or whatever, but he knew when it was enough for me and for them, and he would step in and say, okay, son, he said, babe, that's okay, come here, son, come on. Mm-hmm. And when he would do that, they knew then, okay, this is the ultimate of discipline right here. I'm getting ready to get. And sometimes he would even say to me, babe, you just gonna leave the house. Let me take care of this.
Okay.
And they would be looking at me like, Mom, no, come back and talk.
Come back and talk.
Please, Mom, can you come back and talk? No, he was like, babe, no, you're just gonna leave. Go and get it. And let me take care of that.
It is interesting, and I think it's just